this week on a trip down Goddington Lane.
Fives is probably the only time I genuinely had like performance anxiety. In hindsight now, I wish I'd given rugby 110%. I felt there's definitely some times where I didn't give it my full because I knew, there's other sports I love more. I had fives and I had other things. Sport is something I love and something I do as an outlet and something I want to do it for as long as possible. I want so much to be playing it to the highest level possible and performing at my best every single game. And it sometimes can take it over.
All right, well, welcome everyone to the second podcast of a trip down Goddington Lane, which is the new podcast from us at St Olave's P Department. Today you've got myself, Andy Kenward, and Mike Perks, and we are joined by James Double, who's continuing to do a great job with all of the IT. So James, thank you very much as always. And our guest today is Kosi Nwuba, who is old Olavian, who left in 2017. I've confirmed and got it right this time. So he left 4 years ago. I'm just going to run through some of his achievements to give you a little bit of background as to why we've particularly asked Kosi to come onto the podcast. He was one of those students who threw himself into so many different sports at school and achieved an incredible amount of success within those sports. It's hard to identify, really, if I'm honest, which is his best sport. He might have an opinion on that, and maybe that's something we'll look into during the podcast. As a fives player, he won the under 14 rugby national championships, under 16 and under 18 Eton Fives national champions. He was football captain, perhaps self-appointed in years 9 and 10, it might be fair to say, but nonetheless, yeah, the smile gives it away. But he set up football really in his year group, and I remember the conversations we had surrounding that because he was instrumental in that and helped organise and fix and so on for his year group. He was vice captain in year 13 for football and top scorer and league winner with his year group. As a rugby player, he represented the A team from year 7 all the way through to year 13 and was one of the top try scorers in every year that he played. He also played basketball for the school in years 11 to 13, represented us on numerous occasions in athletics, primarily in 100 metres and the throwing events of javelin, discus and shot put. But also in his sporting repertoire is some swimming, tennis and table tennis. So you can get a real sort of sense of the range of activity and sport that Kosi was involved in and to a high standard as well. He's currently a very busy man and a very important man studying medicine at Homerton College in Cambridge, and this is his 4th year of study. And just before we came on air, he was telling us about how he's much more involved practically now, and as we can all imagine in the current times, is a very busy man at the moment in particular. Kosi, thank you for everything that you're doing medically, but also thank you for giving up your time in what is, I know, a really busy week for you to be with us this evening. So welcome to the podcast and thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, our pleasure. We've spoken a lot there about what you did at school. And as always, I'd like to just sort of start a bit before that with a question about how you got into sport. Was it school that got you into sport or family members, friends? What are your earliest sporting memories?
Honestly, I'm a huge football fan. So I grew up in a house where when my dad was in Nigeria, so my parents came to the UK when they were about 30. So when he was in Nigeria, Liverpool were the dominant team in the 70s and the 80s. So he came to UK and was a big Liverpool fan already. And so I've grown up in a household which we always watched football. But I never really had the chance to play football in primary school. We didn't have a football team until year 5. So probably it was me in the playground with a rolled up sock with some of my classmates in year 2 and year 3. So the first proper chance I got at actually doing football was in year 5, and before that it was probably reception sports days and year 1 sports days in primary school, and just doing basically PE classes. But the first sport I properly played in like a team setting was genuinely probably when I was about 9 or 10, and I started playing for my primary school football team.
Okay, and is that a sport that you always sort of thought you'd get into, or were there other sports out there as well at the time that you were like, oh, I wish I could have a go at that sport?
Yeah, I sometimes I can't describe how much my passion for football is. So if I could choose a profession, that would be it. But I think I'm someone who's always loved sport. So my family were actually big tennis fans. When I was growing up, we watched a lot of athletics as well. My brother was a big basketball fan as well, so that rubbed off on me. So I have followed a lot of sports for a while, but none quite as intensely and passionately as I do football.
Okay, then bringing it forward a bit then to Olavs, and obviously as a secondary school, it's going to have more sporting facilities than most primary schools and so on. Did you, when you came to the school, think, right, I'm just going to throw myself into as many different sports as possible at that point, or was it something that your mates did and so you joined in with them, or what? How did that sort of happen?
I think a bit of that, but also a bit of just the school, like the opportunities that you're constantly given. I think it's funny because I played rugby year 7 to year 13, and I remember how anti-rugby I was coming in year 7. I had never had much experience with it, but the way it works is that when you're in year 7 and you're in year 9, a lot of your PE and game sessions throw you and expose you to lots of sports you would not necessarily have tried. So it was definitely a case of I'm now seeing lots of these other sports which I think I could have a go at and could be good at. And then when you start doing a sport and you start to have some success with it and you enjoy so many things that come with the sport, like the team aspect, the mental aspects, having that outlet, balancing it with schoolwork. It's something I enjoyed. So it's funny because people always sometimes ask me about, oh, you did lots of stuff at school, but I generally don't think there's anything I did outside of my schoolwork at school I didn't genuinely enjoy. So it was probably started from let me try a few things, and the school giving us all of these options, and it turned into I'm going to continue doing these things because I really enjoy these things, and then everything that comes with being in those teams.
And what would be some of your sort of best memories of school sport then at Olavs in particular? Are you happy to share any of your sort of what would be?
Yeah, I have so many, and it's funny in hindsight now how much more you appreciate them, whereas when you're in the moment you don't actually appreciate how much, how valuable those memories will be. I talk with some of my friends now about Saturdays, just the normal Saturday when you're coming into school and you're getting an hour and a half coach to go and play a rugby game. And probably a regret is that I didn't appreciate it when I was in the moment, because those are honestly some of my best memories. Like, one of my friends, I was actually with him recently, and we were just saying, like, when we used to come to school, we used to leave on Friday knowing that we would see everyone else, a lot of people again on the Saturday. And lots of times there used to be social events on a Saturday evening, and everyone would talk about, oh, how was your rugby game this morning? And it was a topic of conversation on Monday morning as well. So that even just the ordinary Saturday, that regular, something to look forward to at the end of the week was a big highlight. And then there's some, obviously standout moments, like I particularly enjoyed the under-18 national Eton Fives final, because it was the last tournament I was doing in school, playing fives. Tom, my partner, and I had underperformed the year before, even though we were strong favourites. So it almost increased the pressure when we're in year 13. And I know Eton Fives isn't a very well-known sport, but I think when you're in that moment and you really want something, it was a really big achievement for myself, I thought, to see that through. And then also, I have a couple more actually. Definitely the football team in year 13, we won the league. And we won the league in a dramatic way in one of our last games, when we were 3-0 down and we came back to win 4-3. And I scored a few goals in that game as well. So, if I could recreate that feeling, it's like such a high, especially as I'm a striker. So scoring is such a great feeling, and that definitely stands out. And me and my friends who played in that team to this day will talk about that a lot. And then probably the last one is in when we were in year 13 as well, we got to the national, I think it was the Vars final, the rugby team. And just that whole experience of, leaving school early, going to Six Ways and playing, where people could watch on the computer. People were watching in school. And I just remember thinking, wow, for all I used to complain about rugby in the earlier years, the number of things it gave me, it's priceless. Generally, it's priceless, and these are some like the best memories. I haven't even touched on the rugby tours we went to, the pre-season tours we went to, some of the relationships I've gained from doing sports, and all of these other character building things that are serving me well even now. So I mean, so many memories, but those are just to name a few. I hope I didn't.
It's always great as one of the things that every P department up and down the country will likes to do is reminisce with students from the school about past glories and so on. So we'd have happily left you chatting for ages there, but there's a few things I want to sort of pick up if I can and go into that. First is the fives. When you mentioned that you as an under 17 then, so a year early for the under 18 champion, you said you underperformed.
Yeah.
Can I just sort of revisit that memory for a bit? First of all, why do you think you underperformed? This is not your opportunity to have a go at your partner, but
not even.
Why do you think you did underperform then, and what helped you other than an extra year's practice and so on? I get that, but what else did you learn from that maybe made you win the following year?
Yeah, fives is such an interesting sport because no one knows what it is. And when I was going away, when I had friends from outside school asking me what you're doing, they wouldn't even know. But I think when you're in that sport, like, it's one of the most difficult sports I've actually played in terms of the psychology, which makes me appreciate more these world-class sports stars who are performing by themselves. Psychology is 80% of it, and I can't stress that enough. We won the under 16 championships when we were in year 11, and then coming into sixth form, there wasn't any strong contenders in the year above. And I think in the year before, we'd got to the quarterfinal of the under 18s as under 16s and lost in the quarterfinal against the eventual winners. So it was already a case the year before that there weren't many pairs in school fives as 16-year-olds who could beat us. And I think it was a mixture of early on in year 12, I picked up a finger injury. I actually dislocated my finger playing rugby. So I missed a month and a half of fives. And there was just this pair from Eton who every single time we played them from year 7 to year 12, we beat them. But then we played one game against them at the start of year 12 and we struggled. We ended up winning, I think, in maybe 4 sets, but it was very, very difficult. And we played them again later on in the year. So how it works is that you will play against the other pairs so that they can work out the seedings, sort of like the tournaments that build up to a Grand Slam and tennis help to figure out the seeding sort of thing. And we lost to them in that match. I think it was just a case of like a mixture of the injury and preparation, but also psychologically, they won a different level that year. It was like nothing could stop them. And Tom and I, we couldn't get it right. And especially me, psychology is something that actually affected me quite a bit. Fives is probably the only time I genuinely had like performance anxiety, and it used to affect me quite a bit in big tournaments. So semi-finals, quarterfinals, it always took me maybe sometimes a set to get into my rhythm. And then once I'm loose, once I'm free, then I come into my own and play more. And that's actually where having a partner like my partner, Tom, who was very, very on it from the start, was really useful for me. And I think it was a mixture of all these different things that just meant that we couldn't, I don't know what it was that we just couldn't get that bit over them. And especially as someone, the way I always like to deal with being nervous about things, like for example in academics, the reason I like academics is that you can prepare. You know roughly what's going to come up, and if you spend a lot of time, especially in school, studying, you know that would translate into results. And because of the injury, I didn't feel I was able to prepare as much, especially with sport when there's a lot more unknowns. I like to prepare even more, so to almost make sure that it's a guarantee. And not being able to really feel like we were in our top form going into the tournament, mixed with these other issues again, and just this pair were on a different level, meant that we just couldn't get past them in the semi-final. And that was, I mean, yeah, it's tough, but fives is one of those sports that I think unless you play it and you've been in those high pressure situations, you don't appreciate how much the psychology plays a part. So the psychology, not really having the best preparation, and the outstanding play that the other pair played that year probably meant we didn't quite get over the line. And then the next year, I think it was a case of, I mean, uninterrupted preparation, and we were quite clearly the best pair out there. We ended up playing in the final against the second pair of Olafs, which probably showed just how strong we were, but also you could argue that there wasn't actually any other serious competition for us in terms of, we'd been to like the late stages of tournaments quite a bit, and there was no one else who'd been in the mix that much. But again, you obviously have to execute. We actually went, I think, at some points in the final, we were a couple of points away from losing against the second pair of Olaf. So even in the final, again, that psychology can just change things in an instant. But I think it was, again, so just better preparation, believing that we were the strongest pair that helped us get over the line the next year.
That's really interesting. It's interesting for you to mention as well Tom Gallagher, your partner, who's a tremendous sportsman in his own right as well, and that how important he and you, presumably, if we were here chatting to him, he might say, how you helped him out as well in different situations, and how that sort of teamwork and that relationship that the two of you had was obviously really important to your success. Do you always think sort of team sports were more your thing than individual sports? I mean, when we read out the sports that we played earlier, most of them were team sports. I know you've done some athletics and some tennis and so on, but is team sports the thing that really gets you going? And if so, why is that?
100%. I think just from the 5 experience, even I'll be so honest with you, sports day, running 100 meters, I used to get so nervous, unbelievably nervous. And again, sports 100 meters is fine because after 12 seconds, it's over. But unbelievably nervous. And I think it's just having all that pressure on yourself to perform. And it was slightly easier in 5s, but again, it's still only 2 people. So that, again, 2 people almost is still very, very individual. The reason I just like team sports is because you have 11 of you working together. And I think when you're training, you train as a team, right? There's so many more things that can come out of training as a team, playing as a team, traveling to games, going away with a team. At university, I play football at university, and again, like, it's not just been a great outlet, and a way to stay fit, but it's also you build lots of friendships from that doing that sport, and you get to go to lots of interesting places. And I think all of these things combined has really meant I'm so much more of a team sport sort of person rather than individual. And honestly, I think the psychology of the individual is enough of a reason for me to be like, probably not for me. And I know myself that wanting to perform in a team is different, because you win as a team, you lose as a team. But having to perform as an individual, it's all down to you. And to be very honest, that's definitely something I did struggle with in 5s, for example, and even in athletics. But again, this is on a small scale. But I think even having that almost that small experience was enough to really show me that I'm very much a team sport sort of person.
You mentioned training earlier. Do you like training, or is it all about you train because then you get to play the match and the match is the big reward? Or is there a reward in training itself?
Yeah, I think everyone likes the sessions that are fun sessions, and people don't like the sessions that aren't fun sessions.
What's a fun session for Kosi Nwuba?
Like if we take football, for example, everyone likes the sessions where you're doing finishing practice and you're doing small-sided games, but no one likes the preseason sessions where you're doing fitness and the track session where you're running, sort of thing. That sort of thing, and everyone loves it after when the sessions are fun. But then I think even though I think to succeed in any sport, you have to have the hard sessions, right? And even when the fun sessions require a level of intensity and a level of commitment and a level of being switched on to translate into good results. But yeah, training is clearly very important for anything you want to do, right? And I think rugby's another example. Rugby, there's some sessions that I really would love to do in rugby. You may be doing touch sessions, whereas you have those sessions where you're doing set piece style session. Lineouts, you're standing around sort of thing, and it's one of those ones basically.
Sorry, go on,
Mr. K. On that point, would you say that obviously your variety of sports played a massive factor in your kind of journey in sport? Would you say that the ability to train in different sports and the transferable skills actually improved your overall level of performance, or would you say that it actually detracted because you weren't able to focus on one? I'm just curious to kind of jump in and see what your thoughts were, get looking at it in the bigger picture and then looking at it smaller.
Yeah. I would never say it detracted. I think the only thing that would have detracted from making as a sports person, or taking sports maybe to a semi-pro sort of level, is me not putting the time and effort to get to that stage, if that makes sense. So it wasn't like I was doing 5 sports, and because I did those 5 sports, I didn't make it to the top in any of them. It's more because it was never my priority to, like rugby is a good example. Rugby is a sport that I think I have a natural inclination for, but I never took rugby as seriously as I could have and perhaps should have. I think all my sporting endeavors and experience, I think when you're basically every single day after school, you have a sporting activity. It can only be good for you when you're 15 and your body just recovers straight away. And it was keeping me fit. It was keeping me healthy. So I wouldn't say they took away from anything or detracted from the other. I would say just not having, really set in my mind. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to try and take this to the next level is probably what has meant I haven't, I'm not now doing sport and not at uni, for example.
And on that point, obviously you made the point of the value of playing in a team sport. Would you say that how has that benefited you in, say, your life now at a university level? Obviously in a hospital. You mentioned earlier before we started recording about how you now work in the rotation and you're in hospital. How would you say those skills are there skills which have transferred from your sport into your kind of more professional life now?
Yeah, the skills are incredibly transferable, and even now I have friends who are applying to jobs and trying to make it in the real world are going back to those skills. Just basic things like communication, basic things like work ethic, basic things like time management. When I was at school, I was doing so many different activities that you have to be organized with your time. All of those things are transferable. Even going to sporting events and having to interact with adults and have more mature conversations, and then the camaraderie and the banter that you'll have in a team setting and being comfortable in those situations. All those things suit you so well for going into the world. I think even just being interested in sport is a conversation starter. So when you meet someone, you almost certainly can find a sport. For example, if they don't like football, they'll like rugby. If they don't like rugby, they'll like athletics or tennis, sort of thing. And all that sporting experience mixed up into one is, I honestly couldn't know where I'd be without. It's almost it's like a big part of my personality. And if you meet me, you'll know that those things about me. So yeah, I'm carrying it forward until today for sure.
And in terms of time management, I remember really respecting you, especially in that sixth form year where you were also captain of school as well. You played a host of musical instruments from memory. Are you still playing any music? Yeah,
but at my church at university, I play the piano each week. So I accompany the choir in the church bands. Saxophone, not so much. Again, university is incredibly busy, and I think you can't do everything. And I think that's something I almost thought I could do everything at school, but at university, I generally think it's probably impossible. I can impossible.
I can definitely respect that point. But it was more, my point was about, I always respected how you used your time management skills, and when you actually invested in something, you were always 100% invested. So if it was rugby, it was always 100%. When you're there, you're in the moment and you're playing the game, or if you're doing a school assembly. I remember one of your assemblies, you're 100% in, and that's a characteristic which I always respected about you, Kosi. And I suppose that as you get older, that the priorities sometimes change. But how are you at the moment factoring in? You still mentioned about how you still play kind of university. Is it still a really important part of your life in terms of the playing element, or is it something which takes a little bit more of a backward step? How do you view sport at the moment?
Well, I'm very humbled by that. Thank you for saying that. Sport is always going to be, in fact, I'm trying to make the most of the final few years I have of this sort of organized team sport where it's just right there for you and it's so accessible at university. So at university, I play for the university football team and have done since first year. And probably the same way sport gave me my best memories at St. Olave's, it's given me some of my best memories at university. I've been to China twice, America, Portugal with the football team. And I think I've really tried to explain how much I love football. So playing it and having this outlet and this opportunity to play it so consistently and to a very good standard with lots of other very talented players, it's amazing for me. But at the same time, I do appreciate that. I am also appreciating now because I'm now in 4th year and a lot of the people I joined university with have graduated. So as they transition more into their working lives and as my course becomes a lot more clinical and I'm spending a lot of time in hospital, I'm almost like, in that transition to a working professional. Sport can't be the main thing because it's not my career goal. So I think there has to be you have to appreciate there has to be priorities, and you have to make sure to put the priorities of what's most important first. And I think because of how much I intensely love playing sport and football, for example, I want so much to be playing it to the highest level possible and performing at my best every single game. And it sometimes can take it over. Maybe you're not in the best bit of form, you haven't scored in a while, you don't make the team, that sort of thing. And so I'm definitely trying to sort of give the other side to definitely maintain a sensible perspective now, where sport is something I love and something I do as an outlet and something I want to do it for as long as possible, but also to make sure I'm putting all my energy into the things of highest priority as well, and making sure I'm enjoying doing sport when I'm doing sport and not, letting it consume me, if you like.
Awesome. Thanks, Kosi.
Can I pick up on something you had said earlier, Kosi, where we've obviously spoken a lot about how you are a, inverted commas, successful sportsman. And I'd like you to sort of, if you can, define what you think success is. And relating to that, does a Kosi now define success in the same way that, say, a 14, 15-year-old Kosi would have defined success?
That's a very good question. I think now, at the level I'm playing now, success for me in sport now is, first of all, I'm enjoying it. And then, we're winning games. I'm scoring goals. As a striker, that's quite a good way to judge. I think when I was 14 and 15, it's honestly probably similar in terms of that the team you're playing with, you want the team you're playing with to do well, right? You want to score tries, you want to contribute to the team, you want to help the team. And it's the same thing with fives, you want to win games and tournaments. But honestly, I think the more I've grown, success also is making sure you're enjoying it, making sure that you're putting into it what you want to get out of it as well. And it's actually sort of to just almost go against what you've said. I actually think, particularly for rugby, in hindsight now, I wish I'd given rugby 110%. I felt there's definitely some times where I didn't give it my full because I knew, there's other sports I loved more. I had fives and I had other things. Because now I can appreciate how much I got from those sports, right? And how much further I could arguably have taken it. So I think success is just making sure that what you want to get out of it is what you put in. I think sometimes the complacency of and just taking for granted how accessible and how great the opportunities were for sport meant you just, you put in 60-70% and you wanted to get out 80-90, and that's not how it works. So now I've appreciated definitely at university now. So being and wanted to make the first team squad and wanted to make sure I'm starting every game. If you want to do that, you have to put in the work, right? Like, for example, in lockdown now, I'm running every day. I'm making sure I'm keeping in shape. I'm making sure I'm trying to eat right. Those sorts of things. Those all, for me, are good barometers for success, as well as obviously you want to win games, you want to score goals, and you want those accolades that come with playing sport as well.
On that then, the age-old football question: lose 3-2, but you've scored 2 goals, or win 1-0 and you haven't scored? You're going to choose.
Oh my word! I think any striker who asks this question will tell you they'd rather win 1-0. But I'll be honest with you, if they're being very honest, they wouldn't mind losing 3-2. So to be politically correct, I'll tell you I'd rather win 1-0. But it's always good to score. I'll put it that way.
Okay, you've no doubt worked with a lot of different coaches over the years at school, at university, and so on. What's the best advice the coach has ever given you, either directly to do with sport or just in general terms?
Oh, Unfortunately, I can't think of anything specific that you two have told me to try and.
It doesn't have to be.
But actually, I was
disappointed, Kosi. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, pull your socks up.
It was genuinely something I heard recently. So when I came back to university this year, again, this has been a bit strange because of obviously coronavirus and the pandemic, and sports have been definitely limited. But I found myself in fourth year, still wanted to play football at the highest level and start every game and score a goal a game. And honestly, there was a stage earlier this year that I wasn't. Was I enjoying playing? I'm not sure I was. And it was just one of my former coaches. We actually had an old boys game, and he returned. He just told me that you have nothing to prove to anyone. You're doing this because you love to do it. And I think even now I'm slightly older than lots of the people I'm playing with. So he said that what I can do for other people is invaluable. And I remember some of the older boys when I was in first year and second year, and what they said was so useful for me. Or even in school, some of the year 12s and 13s, when you're in year 8 and year 9, you look up to them so much. And when you're in that position of slightly more experience and slightly more authority within that sporting context and also within life, what you can do for the people that are slightly more junior than you is invaluable and it's priceless. So I think that's changed my whole outlook now. So I can't wait for football to start again, because I'm just going to make sure I'm enjoying every single second of it, and I'm making sure that I'm helping and contributing to other people and my teammates and the squad members as much as I can. Because when it's all said and done, you're not going to remember, oh, that game I came off after 60 when I wanted to play the whole game. You're going to remember the memories. You're going to remember the relationships you made, and probably the people that you've actually, added value to and helped. They're going to remember those moments as well, and they'll be much better off for it. So that is honestly, because it's also recently and fresh in my mind, really, really changed my outlook on how I approach sport now.
How do you? I'd like to sort of start to sum up a little bit, and I know you've touched on this, Kosi. How would you say sports has helped to shape you as a person?
Oh, wow. Oh, it is genuinely, you can't put it into words. It is inexplicable how much it can mean to you. And even now, this small opportunity this evening to reminisce, and just that feeling of nostalgia is unbelievable. And I wish I could almost go back and be a fly on the wall at some of those moments and some of the experiences. It's everything, right? Most of my close friends from school, we played sports together. Most of my close guy friends, we like similar sports. A lot of our jokes are based around sports. We meet each other to play. We meet each other to watch. It's so pervasive in everything that I'm doing, and in all the memories I've made, and probably more memories that I will make. All the qualities we talked about, right? Working in a team, the relationship you get from working in the team, even sometimes dealing with disappointment, right? Dealing with failure. Being respecting coaches and leaders and captains, just so many different complex, transferable soft skills, memories, you name it, that I've got from sport in a whole. And it's not just rugby, it's not just football, it's fives, it's basketball, it's swimming. When I went to that swimming gala, when I hadn't swum in about 3 or 4 years, and I did, I think, the 50-meter swim. These are memories I'll remember forever. And yeah, it's amazing. I actually thank you so much for even allowing me to come this evening, because this opportunity to think back and remember those, those sports days and how excited everyone would get for sports day. It's phenomenal. So I honestly couldn't put it into words, but it's important. I hope I've made it clear that it's such a big part of everything I am today, and how I've grown and shaped me to be who I am now.
It's a top answer, Kosi. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to finish with a few sort of quick fire questions, if I may. I'm not going to put a sort of time limit on it, and James can no doubt edit it to make it look like you fired this in straight away anyway. But try and you've told us how honest you are, so let's find out, hey. Okay, I think I know the answer to the first one, or I'll have a good guess. But when was the last time you cried at a sporting event?
Oof. Honestly, Liverpool are making me cry every week at the moment. Oh my word, Liverpool are making me cry every week. Oh, probably, let's say Kiev, Champions League final.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I thought that
Okay.
might be the answer.
Three dinner guests, sporting dinner guests that you would choose to have round if you could.
Wow, that is tough. Oh my. Okay, for fairness, I won't keep them all football. So let's say football. Let's go Virgil van Dijk because of the situation right now.
Yeah, he's got some fun in his hands. Yeah.
Tennis, Rafael Nadal, one of my favorite players, and let's go basketball. Steph Curry. I'm a big Steph Curry fan.
Okay, great. Thank you. After training, what's your favourite food to eat?
Back in school days, it was crisps and rubbish, to be honest, from Tesco, the convenience store on the way home. Now, probably rice. I would say rice. Rice and stew. It's a Nigerian dish. I ate quite a lot at home and quite a lot at uni as well. So that's my go-to, rice and stew.
Okay. Other than football, what's your favourite sport to play?
Ooh. Probably basketball.
Okay, and last question, then you're off the hook. What advice would you give an 11-year-old Kosi Nwuba in terms of sport?
Make the most of it. Enjoy every moment. And also take more pictures so you can remember better in the future. Those are probably the things I would say. But make the most of it. Oof. I think I made the most of it 60%. I could have made the most of it so much more. And enjoy every moment as well. Even those moments I don't feel like they're so enjoyable. Those 2 degrees rugby sessions after school when it's getting dark and you have homework due the next day. Enjoy every single moment and take more pictures, because I really didn't take many pictures at school, and I'd love to have more physical pictures to remember my time playing sport by.
Kosi, you gave us loads of wonderful memories when you were at school, so thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining us tonight for this podcast. As I say, I know you're really busy. Good luck with the rest of your medical degree. I hope that goes well for you. Please do stay in touch with us in the school. But Kosi Nwuba, thank you.
Thanks, Kosi.